Statue of Black teen who fought segregation replaces Robert E. Lee at the U.S. Capitol. Let's get into this. I didn't hear this reported anywhere, and I'm on social media daily. I heard no conversation about a Black teen statue being rectified in the U.S. Capitol. This is coming out of the Washington Post, and let's get into this. The symbolism was hard to miss. In the halls of the U.S. Capitol on Tuesday, the statue of a Black teenager who fought against segregation replaced the Confederate general who fought to preserve slavery. Barbara Rose Johns was only 16 when she led a walkout in 1951 to protest horrendous conditions at her segregated high school for Black students in rural Farmville, Virginia. Students complained to the NAACP, and their case went all the way to the Supreme Court, part of the set of cases known as Brown versus the Board of Education that struck down school segregation. Tuesday afternoon, a statue of Johns was unveiled at the Capitol to replace one of the Confederate General Robert E. Lee that had stood for more than a century. Every state is represented by two statues in the halls of the Capitol building, and Johns joins George Washington to represent Virginia. The Commonwealth of Virginia will now be represented by an actual patriot who embodies the principle of liberty and justice for all, and not a traitor who took up arms against the United States, said House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries. A crowd of hundreds gathered in the Emancipation Hall, named for the enslaved workers who helped build the Capitol, including about 200 members of John's family. One of the largest gatherings ever assembled there for a statue unveiling, said House Speaker Mike Johnson. Cheers rang out when the statue was unveiled. There was Johns, who died in 1991, frozen in time, her right arm lifting a book to the sky as she stands beside a podium to rally her peers. The pedestal of the statue quotes scripture, and a little child will lead them. In a few days, the statue will move to the crypt where Lee stood until he was removed in the middle of the night almost exactly 5 years ago. For the Johns family and the Farmville community, the fact that her name is spoken alongside Washington's was stunning and also fitting. The notion of one of the founders of our country being paired with one of the saviors of the soul of our country, I think it's really, really powerful, said Kanan Townsend, who runs the museum and the former Farmville High School where Johns took her stand. His own father was locked out of school there after the Supreme Court issued its ruling in Brown when white leaders shut down the system rather than desegregate it. The politics of race have changed dramatically since Virginia decided in 2020 to replace Lee with John's likeness amid a national reckoning on racism that unfolded in the wake of George Floyd's murder. Lee was carted out of the Capitol and shipped to the Virginia Museum of History and Culture in Richmond, where he stands in a gallery that explores how symbols created a lost cause mythology of the South. Today, the Trump administration has told schools that efforts to address racial inequalities are illegal. Any effort to consider race in constructing policy, the Justice Department says, amounts to racial discrimination. Virginia Governor Glenn Youngkin was a leading figure in the backlash to that 2020 reckoning. He campaigned against teaching critical race theory, a term used to describe a range of topics related to systematic racism. Once in office, he ended diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts to state agencies and public colleges and universities. At Tuesday's ceremony, Yokin recounted visiting the school site where Johns took her stand and recalled the courage she had to muster to lead her classmates in protest of the lie of separate but equal. Separate was not equal, he said. It never was, it never is, and it never will be. In an interview ahead of the event, Joan Johns Cobbs, 86, remembers the fear she felt in 1951 when her older sister Barbara led that walkout. It was dangerous for Black people to stand up, Cobb said in an interview Sunday as she and her husband prepared to drive to D.C. From their home in New Jersey to attend the ceremony. But she said Barbara never showed any fear. They were a farm family, poor, mostly working tobacco. And because their mother regularly traveled to DC for jobs, Barbara was left supervising her younger sister and three younger brothers. We always perceived her as being bossy, Cobb said. She was thrust into a role at an early age that caused her to sort of be aloof from us because she had to reprimand us. The situation made Barbara Jones reserved, stubborn, and filled with determination. She said she always acted as if she wasn't afraid of anything. When she saw white school kids sped by in their comfortable school buses carrying new books and studying in heated and clean classrooms, Barbara Johns realized that the drafty tar paper covered facilities where black students huddled were unacceptable. She arranged for friends to get their principal summoned downtown one day, then rallied more than 400 fellow students to walk out in protest. Later that year, a friendly white farmer warned the girl's father that Barbara was in danger, Cobb said. So she was sent to stay with a relative in Alabama. Her uncle, civil rights activist Vernon Johns, for her senior year of high school. John's compliments contributed to what became one of the Supreme Court's most reverend decisions, but the legacy of Brown is mixed. It's very clear that many of our leaders today are more comfortable celebrating Brown as a symbol than actually worrying about whether we have achieved the promise of the case. So, this is amazing to see because I've never heard of this woman here. Uh, this is why it's important for us, Barbara Rose Johns. This is why it's important for us to preserve our own history because this should not be the first time I've heard of her courageous stands in Virginia. This also says a lot about where we are in history right now. As much as people want to say that things are turning backwards, to see that there's a statue of a young black girl who stood up for freedom, who stood up for her rights, for equality, and it was against segregation, to be next to policymakers in the U.S. Capitol. It's just amazing. And something I never thought we would see. So this is the Awareness District. I am T Short. Thank you for tuning in, listening to this daily. This is exciting. Again, if you have a chance to visit the Capitol, definitely go past and see the Barbara Jones statue. Until next time, please like, share, subscribe, and tell a friend.